Hello internet, I'm going to show you how I use Kryolan Artex and a couple other things you can do besides just making a wound with it. For anyone who doesn't know, this is a 2-part silicone compound. You combine equal parts A and part B, and you have a very short amount of time to make it look how you want to look. First, I've got my metal spatula and I've got a palette. I'm going to start out with a little bit of A and a little bit of B, and this is just kind of the standard use for it. I've also got some alcohol on standby because I use alcohol and a stipple sponge to kind of deal with the edges and whatnot. The alcohol helps the curing silicone not stick to whatever tools you're using. So once those are mixed together, I put those where I want and very quickly try to use my spatula to place it where I need it. I also have a stipple sponge on a stick that I use to begin to sort of press down the edges. There's a few different stages that something like this or third degree, which is very similar to, go through. You have like this really runny stage when it's first beginning to set, and then you start to lead into kind of this sweet spot where it's not set yet, and it's not super runny anymore, and your tools won't stick to it anymore. But sometimes it takes just a moment to get there. I want to say it takes around 5 minutes max for me a lot of the time to completely set, and that sweet spot where you can actually do things to it without it running all over the place and without your tools sticking to it, it's a really narrow window. So this definitely takes a lot of practice getting used to, because again, it starts out really runny, sticking to everything, it could be dripping, and then you have this really tiny span of time where you can actually get anything done. So I'm using a metal spatula and I'm making kind of this fake cut on my hand. I chose this spot on my hand because there's something that I like to do when I have like kind of an injury right here. Since I have these natural lines in my hand, I can use my tools to kind of push the silicone into those and try to help blend the edge a little bit, as well as when it's in that sweet spot where you can manipulate it, you can actually bend your hand a tiny bit and it'll just imprint some natural lines into the silicone, which makes it blend a little bit better. So yeah, again, I use alcohol and my various tools, mainly my stipple sponge, to kind of help push those edges in and blend in. And you can just continually fiddle with this. So then finally, when it's set, I'm just using some foundation to begin to color match it. After I have the foundation down, then I'm getting kind of a cheapo makeup sponge, and this is the Skin Illustrator Flesh Tone palette. This is alcohol activated paints. And I'm using some coral and rose adjuster to kind of add some kind of pinky patchiness like you would naturally find on a hand. I then went in with this blue color. I believe it's just called Vein Tone. And I'm looking at my opposite hand as like a reference photo and adding some veins in where I see them on my other hand. I'm also using kind of a light brown to outline some of those wrinkles, make them more visible on the silicone. So again, just kind of disguising that edge a little bit more. And I'm using a red lipstick. This is a very bright red lipstick. My reference photo made the injury look really vibrant, which is kind of what attracted me to it. And I'm using a little brush and putting that red in there. And I'm also dabbing that red around just a little bit to add some more patchiness and a little bit of irritation. Also, something I enjoy to do with something like this is I put a little bit of KY jelly right inside of the injury to give it a permanent shininess. And if you're very careful, you can actually remove this thing and you can reuse it. Something else I've also used Artex for is kind of making gills. So you mix up a bunch of this stuff. Again, you know, first order of business is to start smoothing out those edges. And then once we're in that sweet spot where we can manipulate it, but it's not really runny, I've got my spatula soaked with alcohol, and I start pushing those edges up. start pushing the gills up. It's basically constantly fiddling with it until it's completely set and you can no longer do anything with it. And then just for kicks, I'm slapping on a teal color, some black splatter, and I use some black eyeshadow and some shimmer eyeshadow to emphasize the deepest parts and the highest parts. And there you go. Oh my gosh, I'm a fish, you guys. Also, as a side note, don't be a dum-dum like me and try to put this on a bald cap, at least a latex bald cap, because latex will prevent this stuff from setting. And then the last thing I love to use this for, I love putting this in molds and making silicone prosthetics with this. So I just put it in my mold. I use hot glue molds. That's kind of the thing I love doing because it's really cheap for those of us that can't always afford to get plaster or something nicer. And I press it to my Lifecast. I use like these worms of clay to just hold everything together so that there are no edges rising up because hot glue molds will do that. And after 10 minutes, it is perfectly set. Ta-da! It's a beautiful nose. I hope this gave you some ideas or there was some good information here. This has been PTBarpun. Whatever day it is that you're seeing this, I hope you're having a good one, and I will see you the next time I do video stuff.